Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Adam Dorsey, a psychologist in Silicon Valley and the host of SuperPsyched, a podcast dedicated to supercharging your life. Each episode contains fun, high-quality interviews with experts looking at psychology from all angles. SuperPsyched is your tool to get more of what you want in your life and less of what you don't. Dating. Whether we feel nervous, excited, joyful, or disappointed, we are putting ourselves out there, meaning we also feel vulnerable. Will my date like me? Will I like my date? Will I be able to trust that person if we take it further? If I decide to double down, will I miss out on a person who's a better match? Given the importance of choosing our life's mate, these and other questions are salient and understandable. And with the advent of online dating, many benefits and challenges have emerged. Fortunately, help is here. One of the best experts I could ever imagine speaking to about managing the realities of dating is none other than my guest, Marc Katz. Evan is a world-class dating coach. He's had over 35 million blog readers, 12 million podcast downloads, and over 13,000 graduates from his dating coaching program. He's the author of multiple books and has been on all the major news outlets. He's also been there himself. He's very open about his own dating life and how he met the love of his life after 300 dates. Please also note, although he specializes in helping women with dating, there's tons of info from Evan relevant to men who are dating as well. So listen in as Evan shares his dating secrets, how they relate to women and men. Evan, a hearty welcome to SuperPsyched.
Thank you for having me. I'm genuinely excited. I don't always say that. I'm genuinely excited to be here.
I am too. My gosh, I love what you do. And really, from my standpoint, if you want society to do well, we want to choose our life partners well. And if we can do that, I believe 50% of our problems are solved. And you are trying to contribute in your own way to women finding men who are suitable for them. And I'd love for you to describe for the women out there who say it's a jungle, how do you inspire hope, first off? I'm not using hope as a strategy. You and I have both sussed out that is not. But how do you provide hope as well as strategy?
Hope has to exist. Hope in and of itself isn't a dating strategy, but you wouldn't wake up in the morning if you didn't have hope that tomorrow could be a better day. So we need to have hope. Once we're hopeless, we're lost, right? You can probably read Viktor Frankl. You need to have something to believe in. And you have to validate women's experience. You can't just wag your finger at them. Great guys don't grow on trees. You never really want to tell someone that what they're experiencing isn't reality. Their reality is that dating apps are really ubiquitous, but not great mechanisms for meeting people or getting to know people. People are more flaky than ever. It brings out the worst in people. Swiping, texting, going strictly to sex, the perception that there's always someone better around the corner. The medium brings out almost the worst in people. But even if we acknowledge that all of that is true, let's just say 90% of men are not capable of being great loving partners. Now, that might seem like a sobering number. Then again, you wouldn't go to a department store and buy 90% of the clothing. You wouldn't take 90% of jobs, right? So there's something about okay, I'm an Ivy League school, right?
I'm selective.
Yeah. I'm going to keep my standards high enough that 90% of people are not going to be right for me. I'm not going to be surprised. I'm not going to be disappointed. That is the most predictable outcome. And then among the 10%, I just got to choose one. And that makes something real, tangible, hopeful. That sounds like reality to me. And that's why people can have hope.
That's brilliant. And what are some of the most common myths that women have, especially since you specialize in working with women around dating?
It's the limiting beliefs are probably bigger than the myths. They sort of tie together. There are no good men left. There are no good men in my city.
Right.
Every guy is looking for just sex. No one wants to get married. Dating apps are terrible. It's basically that my definition of limiting belief, maybe you have a better one. It's something that's partially true, but not totally true. So we could always find evidence that there are guys interested in sex, there are guys who don't want commitment,
Right.
that dating apps have a bad element. It's hard in your city, but you could literally substitute any city. I've never heard a woman say, my city's great for dating. Literally, wherever you are, you're going to complain, my city, men in my city, dating apps in my city. Wherever you go, it's really easy to see what's wrong with it. So we have to sometimes squint to find where's the good, but it's there if you look for it. And that kind of goes for everything. That goes for the internet as a whole. We could say it's a cesspool, and then you could end up in a lovely conversation like we're having right now. And so how do we zoom in and zoom out and not let the bad stuff get us down? Because we need to have the hope that we don't need a million guys to fulfill you for the rest of your life. You need to be more savvy about using these dating apps. You need to be more savvy about how to show up on a first date and what character traits to select for a life partner. But that's a learnable skill. It's not beyond your reach. And there are millions of people who are happily married. You and I are two guys who've known each other for an hour, and we've already established, man, we're really lucky. But we also did a couple of things right along the way.
That's really true. And I'm so grateful for that fact. I'm wondering, it seems like I'm just inferring based on what you're saying that your relationship with internet dating or online dating is fraught. I'm guessing it's something of a necessary evil and that there are other ways. But let's talk about online dating. What are the pros and cons? What are some of the best practice tips that you have versus some things that people may be doing and sabotaging themselves?
So that's a really broad question. I started my career 20 years ago. I was in customer service at JDate. And that was my job, just getting yelled at by strangers for they lost their password or they couldn't upload a photo or whatever it was. And I would just be like, hey, I noticed you haven't logged in a couple of weeks. I noticed your profile only has a couple lines in it. I noticed you sent 17 emails one day and you haven't written to anybody since. I could see all that from the back end. And I realized, oh my God, I have something to offer. I didn't know I had anything to offer. And I wrote a book about online dating called I Can't Believe I'm Buying This Book. And that was 2003. It was 22 years ago. And so I look at online dating as like the gym. You could sign up at the gym because you want to get the result. But if you only go to the gym for the first 3 weeks and then you lose your steam, it's not going to work. If you go to the gym every day, but you read a magazine on a treadmill for 10 minutes, it's not going to work. So how do we use the gym? Back and buys, chest and tries, high intensity cardio, personal trainer, mixing up classes and muscle groups to keep it interesting. There are best practices for health, wellness, diet, motion. And I'd say there are best practices for online dating relationships. And most people have other jobs. They haven't chose to delve into what those best practices are. Over 20 years, I've basically developed a course called Love You that walks people through all of that so we could take all the chance out of it. And it's not magic and it doesn't work perfectly in every situation, but online dating is its own vast field of study. And we can optimize how you write your profile, how often you log in, how you flirt, how you initiate contact, how you respond to people who contact you, when you go from the dating site to meeting them in person. It's all basically an exercise in moderation. So again, I know I didn't answer your question, but that's because there's so much. I got a 7-hour answer to that question.
I love that fact. Can you just give just a little teaser about what might be on Love You in terms of tips for creating a profile, tips for the games that people play, whether or not to reveal your true age, whether or not to even reveal that you're looking for marriage and children? There's so many nuances, but what are some of your top tips just to maybe steer people? Because I think that your program, based on what I know about it, is awesome.
Thank you. I think we often underestimate that this is just an exercise in marketing. If you're heterosexual, you're marketing to a member of the opposite sex. So old school, again, I'm going to stay away from dating apps for a second, but old school dating sites, you're supposed to write an essay, Match.com, write a couple hundred words about you. So what do most people do? They write a biography. They write a list of complaints. They write a list of adjectives, activities, nice, smart, kind, warm, funny, hiking, biking, movies, music, travel, best friend, lover, and partner in crime. And there's nothing wrong with it. It might be real. It might be articulate. The problem is if I say that and you say that and my mom says that, then what's the difference between the three of us? Clearly, there's a lot that's different between us. And adjectives don't work. Hobbies don't work. Cliches don't work. Why? Because everybody uses them. So they have no currency.
They're basically the rough equivalent of night walks on the beach.
If someone else is saying it, it's valueless.
Right.
When I help people write their dating profiles, we remove lists, we remove hobbies, we remove cliches, and we try to tell stories, one-line stories that illustrate who someone is. Wow. But we're doing it for the benefit of the reader. Yep. So here's how the exercise goes, Adam. Your core value is you're smart. Great. You're a smart woman. My clients, smart, strong, successful women. That's the customer avatar. Great. How does a guy benefit from you being smart? It's not, I read The Economist. He doesn't care. I graduated summa cum laude. He doesn't care. I speak 3 languages. He doesn't care. He cares. How does this affect me?
Sure.
I could know how to get us upgraded when we get bumped from a flight, so we're flying first class. I will do the research to help you navigate the healthcare system because of your broken ankle and you can't find a good orthopedist. I know how to navigate that. I can make up shit all day long to illustrate this principle. But I use my wife, for example, because that's to me the easiest thing to grasp upon. My wife isn't intelligent because she majored in math, although that makes her intelligent. My wife is intelligent because she made me a color-coded Excel spreadsheet to help me prepare for a fantasy basketball draft. My wife is intelligent because she explains the plot of A Midsummer Night's Dream because I can't follow Shakespeare. How does the reader benefit from your intelligence? How does the reader benefit from you being fun? You're not fun because you party with your girlfriends in Aspen. You're fun, using my wife again, because you'd throw him a surprise 40th birthday party with an 80s hair metal band and burlesque dancers. So real life stories that illustrate your core principles are going to make you so much more attractive to the opposite sex because it's about what they get out of dating you. And nobody thinks like that.
What I love about that, Evan, is the right person who wants that form of intelligence will recognize that currency as valuable.
Yes.
Versus somebody who doesn't give a crap about it. Like, I don't care about getting bumped up. I don't care about Shakespeare. Well, that's not apparently for you.
The examples are all arbitrary, but instead of using the adjective, illustrate how that adjective applies to the person who's reading your profile. And we could go on down the line. It could be supportive. There's the woman who's supportive because she quit her job to move to Tibet to protest human rights violations, which as a boyfriend doesn't appeal to me. But then there's the supportive, if you're unemployed, I'm going to help you set up some informational interviews and help you with your resume. Tiny little things like that go such a long way because that illustrates what someone gets out of being with you instead of here's who I am, here's the checklist, which has nothing to do with how they treat you. And you know this as a husband. We just put it into marketing terms.
One of the top voices in couple therapy is a fellow by the name of Dr. Stan Tatkin. I love him.
Sure.
He lives right around the corner from you. And I've been on the podcast about 3 times. And one of the things that he describes is marriage is like a buddy cop film. We have to have each other's back. I mean, I know these are 2 interspecies dudes in a movie, but it's almost like Chewie and Han Solo in the Millennium Falcon. Like, you need a good co-pilot, somebody who's got your back, somebody who sees your blind spots. And I love this idea of really, really putting out, these are the benefits you'll get by being with me. And if you recognize these as benefits, there might be something here. If you don't, there probably isn't. There's so many rules and so many games that people play. Don't call immediately. No, blah, 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 blah. What do you think about rules and games in general?
I think that texting has turned dating into a greater power struggle than it ever was before because it's asynchronous. You could text someone and they could get back to you in a minute, an hour, a day, a week. Where in a conversation, you would never talk to someone and they just start walking away in the middle of a conversation.
Exactly.
So there's always a power dynamic. And I think you don't want to leverage power. If you're having a healthy relationship, it's about not leveraging power. If you're building a trustworthy society, it's about laying down your arms and opening them and demonstrating to someone that you're being sincere. So the concept of a 3-day rule where a guy's not going to get your number, he's not going to call you for 3 days. The people who employ the 3-day rule are guys who are either manipulative game players or nice guys who've been told that they smother women and they're trying to hold back. A guy who's authentic is going to be like, hey, I had a great time meeting you last night. What are you doing this weekend? he's going to text you the next day. The games go out the window if you're doing it right. And when I'm a dating coach, I'm trying to get people into authentic relationships to reward good behavior. And sort of your question about games sort of dovetails to best online dating is a sort of steady on-ramp that feels like courtship. It starts online, and maybe we're texting for a couple days, long-form texting, not one-liners, but texting that looks like email conversation. And that long texting conversation where you distinguish yourself from the other people in the pack leads to a FaceTime conversation, which is the equivalent of a first date. You're not meeting a stranger for coffee. You're doing kind of what you and I are doing right now. And if we have this conversation that was supposed to be a half hour, but goes so well that it goes for an hour and a half, now I could feel really comfortable going out for 3 hours with you on a Saturday night. That is old school courtship in the modern age, but most of us skip those steps. We set up dates with strangers via text and then wonder why they flake out on us. They have no investment in you. We wonder, why was that date so bad? He was such a disgusting pig of a man. Well, maybe if you talked to him for 20 minutes on the phone, you would have figured it out and not gone out with him. So we're so geared to instant gratification, the idea that we don't have to put in any time getting to know people. We should be able to choose a husband or a wife from a 3-line Bumble profile. And then I'm terribly surprised that that person is not my soulmate. That person not being your soulmate is the most predictable thing in the world. So I tell women, meet fewer men, date online for a half hour a day, talk to 7 to 10 guys at once. If one of them is worthy of Saturday night with you, get yourself 1 date a week. You're going to find a boyfriend in the next few months if you date that way. If you swipe right, every cute guy gets a date with you. Don't be terribly surprised that you go on a lot of bad soul-sucking dates because there's no screening process. So to put a finer point on it, my central metaphor to women, you are the CEO of your love life. Men are interns applying for a job with you. No intern can walk in off the street and get an interview with Mark Zuckerberg. There's a screening process. And most people online, men and women, do not do any screening, and then they complain dating sucks. So if you screen more, you'll have high quality first dates, and the dating process won't be so bad. That's what people used to do, and dating apps make it harder to do that these days.
I think that's brilliant. And you intuited one of my next questions, and that is using your brain and being the CEO of your own dating life. Let's talk about that. What does it mean to be the CEO of your own dating life?
It means you're coming from a place of confidence, positivity, abundance, rather than negativity, fear, scarcity, the thing that dating often brings out in people because there's so much rejection. People act a certain way online they would never act in real life, but they're hiding behind their phones. And good people, men and women, maybe act poorly online because there's not much of a consequence. It's easier to ghost or slow fade someone when you're not accountable. You don't have to see them at work the next day. And so understanding that this is built into the system itself is somewhat broken. How do we navigate it with integrity? If you're the CEO, you don't take any of these things personally. You show up, you do your best, you market yourself, and you understand that you're not begging someone to pay attention to you. You don't have to remind someone you exist, especially if you're a woman. Men are self-interested. If he finds you attractive, he is going to say, what are you doing tonight? What are you doing tomorrow? And if you say, hey, let's do a FaceTime, he's not going to fight you on the FaceTime. He's going to say, what a great opportunity to get to know her. So if you lay out boundaries for men, the right guy's going to follow the boundaries because you're not making a big ask. Hey, let's text for a couple days. Let's talk on FaceTime. Instead of a swipe right text and he says, hey, 10 o'clock Friday night, want to come over? What are you wearing? And you're like, well, he's cute. Might as well explore that. Oh
my God, right.
And
I wonder how that goes.
People, men, are selfish. Like a kid, they're going to test your boundaries. And if he can swipe right, text you once, then you come over to sleep with him and he didn't have to talk to you on the phone, buy you dinner. Well, aren't you the needy intern who's willing to do anything for a job? Instead of the CEO who's making the guy work for a little bit, but not in a manipulative game playing way, just a really healthy boundaries. Answer these questions. Here's my phone number and a good time to call. You're not asking him out. You're not dragging him to the interview. He's self-interested. And at any point in time, if you don't like the way the intern's acting, you can cut him loose. That's why we look at it like a sales funnel. There's all these guys at the top of the sales funnel. Most of them are not going to be good prospects. They self-eliminate based on their effort, not just on the quality of their profile, how tall, cute, rich he is. What kind of effort is this guy making to text you, follow up with you, plan dates with you? Not just a great first date, but how quickly does he follow up to say, when can I see you again? How quickly does he escalate to want to become your boyfriend? So we're really paying attention to men's behaviors instead of just rewarding men because they're tall or cute or rich. And that is a challenge. That's an intellectual challenge, because why would I ever go out with the 5'8" guy when there's a 6'2" guy? Why would I ever? The paradox of choice is so very real. And online, there's infinite temptation and no one wants to settle. And as a result, you women, my clients are women, they will almost invariably choose guys in the top 2% of men who are often...
The top 2% of men, meaning...
Perception-wise, the top 2% of men are going to have hundreds of women in the queue waiting for them.
Right.
And it's harder for those men to focus and commit to any one woman because everybody's throwing themselves at the top 2% of men. And so men, strangely, as an old OkCupid study, have a more realistic sense of women's attractiveness than women do with men. And that is a challenging thing to hear. So again, in gauche terms, a man is still going to go for the 27-year-old bikini model. That's still going to happen. And we're not going to legislate that out. But a man often has a clear differentiator between a woman who is a 10 and a 7 and a 4. And he might write to all of them. The 10's going to ignore him. The 7 might write back to him. The 4 will probably write back to him. And he kind of knows his place in the ecosystem, and water lands at its own level. Women find 80% of men unattractive. 80% of men are in the bottom 50th percentile.
Wow.
For women, it's more of a binary thing. Where men have like levels of attractiveness, women literally find almost no guys attractive. So then they're competing for the hottest guys and then wondering, why isn't this guy valuing me? Well, you're one of 1,000 people applying for the job with the hot guy. And the hot guy, just because he's hot, doesn't mean he's a nice guy. It doesn't mean he's emotionally available. It doesn't mean he wants to commit. It doesn't mean he's a good communicator. So there is this race to compete for just the top tier guys, instead of saying more realistically in real life, who fulfills 85% of those needs? And there is a universe where you can date a 5'9" guy, says the 5'9" guy, where you could date someone who is not of your same religious tribe, where you could date someone, if you're a woman lawyer and you make 500 grand a year, he could make 200 grand a year and you just got a $200,000 raise. And that's not settling. But people have a really, really hard time not dating the opposite sex version of themselves, but better and without their flaws. And that is the conundrum of 21st century dating, is we're all trying to date someone who's 25% better than we are. And that doesn't always correlate to good partners. That just means more impressive.
So interesting how you're describing what I would call a red herring, these things that distract us. And we think that we should go for the George Clooney. The woman might think, I want to date somebody who looks like George Clooney, but completely ignoring so many other traits that are important. And before I even get into that question, I'm just going to comment. You're also asking the woman to recognize the opportunity cost of time and to really value their time, to value themselves, to say, hey, listen, I have something to offer here. And I'm not just going to be an intern. I'm going to be a CEO and be very selective about who I actually meet IRL. And I'm going to meet them on my terms IRL. And I'm not going to settle for flakes. There are things that will immediately rule out, even if he does look like George Clooney. So I'm wondering, how does a woman get really clear on the qualities that matter?
That's a really good question and a tough question, because dating and relationships are two different things that we conflate. Dating's a performance. A man's ability to be good at dating has very little correlation, not no correlation, but very little correlation to whether he's a good husband. I would bet Donald Trump's pretty good at dating. He knows how to get the limo and pick up the check and choose the restaurant. That dance, any guy could learn that dance. because that's how you get laid. So any narcissist can learn to be good at early phase dating. It's that they fail as boyfriends and husbands.
Absolutely.
So we put so much effort on the performance and the dance and the perception of the guy's alphaness that we really don't pay attention to the things that make for a good relationship: character, kindness, consistency, communication, commitment. And character, kindness, consistency, communication, commitment are not visible in a Bumble profile. Nobody could do it. So if you're trying to figure out, is this guy going to be a good partner for me? You can't do it. So that's the hard part. At the beginning of dating, early phase online dating, we actually have to screen in for men. Women tend to screen out for men. But we want to screen in for men because we don't know what kind of men they are. So is he cute enough? Is his profile intelligent enough? We're talking about a 6.5 here. I work with women who are amazing women and their profiles suck. So I know there's probably some decent guys whose profiles suck too. So we're screening in at the beginning. Is he cute enough? Is he intelligent enough? Now we pay attention to the effort he makes to go from texting to phone call to FaceTime to first date. And how do you feel with him? And then his effort, how does he follow up over time? Does he offer to become my boyfriend in 4 to 6 weeks? Do I feel comfortable with him? Do I feel safe with him? Are we aligned on what we want for the future? You could do all of that before you take down your profile, before you sleep with him. But that's not what most people do. They find the first hot guy who comes along, they sleep with him, then they keep their fingers crossed that it's going to work out. And that's not a dating strategy. People do it all the time. So you really have to be the CEO and watch this person interview for the part of boyfriend and realize just because he's a good boyfriend doesn't make him a good husband. He's consistently auditioning for the part. He doesn't get tenure at your company. He has to earn that over a course of a couple of years. Because any guy, every person who's ever been happily married had a good year with their guy before he turned into a piece of shit. So we actually have to resist the temptation to lock it in, to future pace and give this guy the title of my soulmate until we've gone a few cycles around the sun, until the mask has dropped, until you've had to deal with money issues or communication issues or family issues or sex issues. You can't marry someone at the peak of your attraction. And most people think attraction and chemistry equals compatibility. Chemistry is a piece of compatibility. It's not the whole thing. So this is so grounded in best practices that it's not hard to teach someone this, the same way it's not hard to teach someone to eat right. It's having the discipline to do it and not give in to temptation and not overvalue height, weight, education, income that we see on the dating apps because they have nothing to do. They're not correlated with whether he's a good partner. So making different decisions in dating, not getting on the wrong train in the first 6 weeks and discovering you're off track 5, 10, 20 years later. A lot of it has to do with making good decisions up front because they're going to pay off down the road. And a bad decision, gosh, I had a friend who's 55 and he had 2 wives who were alcoholic cheaters. And he was crying in his car and I was telling him he had to leave his second wife. He's like, dude, what did I do wrong? I said, you made 2 bad decisions and you doubled down on them for your whole life. That's it. So it's really hard to get out of a bad relationship. So the key is to not even get started on a bad relationship, which means not diving into the same bad dating pool over and over and wondering, why does this never work out for me? You can tell someone has character, kindness, consistency, communication, and commitment if you give them the opportunity to reveal it over time. But you can't figure out the whole thing from a dating profile, and you can't just reward the hottest guys on dating profiles, even though, of course, hot is better than not hot, and tall is better than short, and rich is better than poor. And we're not saying you shouldn't get some of these qualities. It's that they don't actually correlate for what you and I were talking about off air, about marrying a guy who's a mensch, marrying a guy who picks up on your emotional cues and remembers to celebrate your birthday and remembers the names of your kids and prioritizes your needs at a higher level than his own needs. You cannot figure that shit out from a first date, from a dating profile. And that's hard. That's why I have a job.
And it's so interesting. You bring up sex and how it complicates things and how often when people jump into bed really quickly and the chemistry is there and it's hot and we try to make a square peg fit in a round hole. We just really, really, really try so hard. And then there's this cognitive dissonance. And yet somehow they end up getting married and end up in my office. Very often, the top complaint, if my office was a game of Family Feud, is my marriage isn't great. In fact, I married the wrong person is a very common complaint that I hear.
Yes.
And there was a knowing, even when they got down on a knee very often, because I work with the men, and there's a custody evaluation that's just around the corner. And it's so, so sad. So you talk about these time-honored traits, these wonderful virtues of kindness, character, commitment, communication, and consistency. And you also say that what you hope for your women who see you as clients is that they feel safe, heard, and understood. And I'm so glad that you've come up with these targets of what good looks like. Safe, heard, and understood. I will corroborate those as a psychologist. Those are really good targets to be hit. And I agree with your 5 C's. I know one of them is a K, but I think that they bear repeating. So let's talk about those. How did those 2 classifications of what you hope the impact will be, the safe, heard, and understood, and what you hope that they will gravitate towards in terms of regardless of how it presents itself, but the kindness, the characteristic, that character, the commitment, communication, and consistency. These are amazing.
So I'm not a psychologist. I'm not part of academia. I've never read a research paper in my entire life.
Okay.
This is all validating. The conversation's validating to me. It's all anecdotal, experiential learning, being single and going on 300 dates from 25 to 35, and now being married for 17 years, coaching for 22. I didn't make any of this stuff up. It's just what was reflected back to me. And I remember the safe, heard, and understood conversation. It was a woman in her 60s. Her name was Carol. And she was seeing a guy for 6 months. She'd been married 3 times before to selfish alpha males, high conflict, lots of money, never worked out, always felt dismissed. And she was seeing this guy. And I remember the story. The guy said, Carol, I'm not a religious person, but you go to church every Sunday. I'd love to come to church with you to see what you're experiencing. And she's like, in 60 years, I've never had a guy say anything like that to me. And my client, she hired me to break up with this guy. And in that moment, it was very clear to me that the thing that the guy was doing was making her feel safe, heard, and understood. And she started to cry. And so that's how I knew I was onto something. And again, it was just a made up thing. And like, I can't point to this in a paper, but this boyfriend who didn't look the part with what she was most attracted to, height, weight, education, income, this guy just wanted to know her and see her and validate her and be a part of her world. That was not how she was raised. So then we get into the psychology of it. Why do people want things that are bad for them? And that's not their fault. It's the environment they grew up in. So you're really good with metaphors and analogies. I've picked that up in a very short period of time. So I put it like this. A lot of women are attracted to men who are junk food. Maybe it's even tasty junk. It's steak and ice cream. It's really high-end junk food. It is the best tasting thing. Why would I eat anything other than steak and ice cream until you go to a doctor and says, you're going to die. It's not good for you. It may taste better than everything out there, but you can't sustain yourself on this because this is the guy who works 70 hours a week. And this is the guy who's 6'4" and spends 2 hours at the gym and doesn't have time to listen to you. This is the guy who thinks he's God's gift to women. And so he wants an open relationship. So this is your steak and ice cream. And then I do my spiel, kindness, consistency. Oh my God, that sounds so boring. I'm not attracted to those guys. Doctor, you telling me that I have to eat rice cakes and kale? There's what I say, and then there's what they're hearing. And I said, well, when did I say anything about rice cakes and kale? You've gone from a doctor saying this diet that's made you become 300 pounds, this diet of men that's made you feel unseen, miserable, anxious, small, and you keep on doubling down on that, hoping that works. I just said, find something that's healthier. And there's a whole lane of food that you haven't even explored in the supermarket. We'll call it chicken and vegetables. So women here, you can't date the 6'5" finance guy, triathlon bro anymore. You're telling them to date some guy they don't respect, who's not attractive, who's boring, who has no opinions or ideas of his own. I don't want to date that guy. And they forgot everybody in the middle.
Binary reality that they create.
It's these false binaries that we create. So I know that some of my messages, when people hear it, they think I'm telling them to do something that is distasteful. No, you can go to the gym 4 days a week. You can watch what you eat and still enjoy your food. And that's kind of the husband that is the type O husband for women. It's 7 chemistry, 10 compatibility. Compatibility, how does he treat me? How do I feel? So have you dated men who were taller? Yes. Have you dated men who were sexier? Yes. Have you dated a guy who's treated you better? No. What's going to determine whether you're happy when you're 80? How does he treat me? How do I feel? And if we could pay attention to how does he treat me? How do I feel? Rather than the tail of the tape, comparing men in the past to the man you're dating now, you can get happy. And I say this not from any sort of pedestal. I say this as the guy who did that. I was trying to date the East Coast Jewish liberal intellectual lawyer who knew all the bands at Coachella and could hand me a self-help book that I never read before and knew of the coolest places to go in Prague and was a black diamond skier. And I married none of those things. And I'm the happiest married guy outside of the person who's hosting this podcast.
Right on. So happy for you. And it's amazing how much of this is really related to street smarts and real life data. I was wondering, one of the skills that many of us lack is the ability to say, you know what, this isn't going to work out. The ability to say no or breaking up with somebody you're kind of temporarily dating. How do you advise people? You're a bit of a Cyrano. I know that you had Cyrano. How do you whisper in their ear to tell them, here's how you break up kindly?
2 different questions buried in that question.
Sure.
One is, how do you break up? And the other one is, when do you break up?
And maybe even, how do you know? Regardless.
The way I did it, and I did a bunch of things wrong. A big portion of what I teach are things that I did wrong as a single guy for a long period of time. You don't go out with 300 people if you're doing it all right. So I learned a lot as a single guy of what I was doing wrong, and I try to share that with women. One thing I did right was that I was not a serial monogamist. My wife was a serial monogamist. 3 years, 5 years, year and a half. She could break up with me tomorrow. She'd find another husband in a couple days. That's a problem because it means you're not really a good CEO. You're not being discriminating. You're just hiring the first nice guy or seemingly nice guy who wants the job. So being willing to keep the job open for a long period of time and say, hey, I got one job at this company. Its title is husband. There are great benefits. And if I realize you're incapable of being the man I need you to be, I'm not going to waste one more day on you. Even if I like you, even if I love you, this is a waste of my time. You would never pour money into a bank account where you couldn't withdraw from it. And that's what happens. And that's the one thing I did right when I was single. I did not stay 1 day longer. So I would have 1 month relationships, 3-month relationships, 6-month relationships. I never had a relationship longer than 8 months prior to my marriage because I didn't see the point of wasting my time or theirs. And I don't know what that is, but that is how I encourage my clients to date. Fired. Fire the intern. He's not going to last at this job. You may like him. You may love him. He's already proven that he can't be the man that you spend the rest of your life with. You have all the evidence to reveal that. So listen to that. Believe the negative, ignore the positive.
That's such an interesting cognitive bias because so often we look at the negative and ignore the positive. But when it comes to dating, it's almost like the negativity bias turns on its head. We ignore the negative. And how do you get people more in their heads and out of their hearts when their hearts are deceiving them?
This interesting terminology, and I don't have a great answer for you yet, but this interesting terminology about head and heart. Yes, there's something cerebral about what we're talking about. You have to think about it. When you're really attracted to someone, all critical thinking goes out the window.
That's right.
So I don't know if it's the heart that's doing the thinking, but all critical thinking goes out the window when you're attracted to someone. And then women could be in physically and verbally abusive relationships with men. But he said he loves me. But he said he can't live without me. But he said he's never been so connected with someone in his entire life. So we hold on to these little talismans, these tiny things that for the most part are worthless. Oh, we just had a great weekend together. Oh, he just bought me a tennis bracelet. but most of the time you're miserable. So we hold on to the positive here. My way of getting into this is remove head and heart for a second. I encourage, and again, I'm a coach for women, but I would say the same thing about men, to listen to their feelings. So it's not an intellectual exercise, it's actually an emotional exercise. What I've noticed is that people in bad relationships are anxious a lot. They can't let down their guard. They can't be themselves. They can't have a difficult conversation. They can't set boundaries. They're afraid that something they say is going to be used against them. It's going to cause a fight. It may cause a breakup. Anytime I ever had a bad relationship, I might have been in love, but I knew that my head was on the chopping block.
That's right.
So people who have anxious attachment style correlate anxiety with love, and love is the opposite of anxiety. So calm, at peace. Most people don't associate relationships with calm and at peace, but that's actually the healthiest relationship, is one where you don't have to walk on eggshells, where you could be authentic, where you could let down your guard, you could be vulnerable. That is the only healthy relationship. So I tell women to stop normalizing anxiety. If your relationship is anxious, and I don't care if he is a tantric sex master, I don't care if he has $1 billion company, I don't care if he gives you screaming orgasms, or he's a ballroom dancer, or he's a stand-up comedian. If you're anxious, your relationship is worthless. So I tell people, remove the checklists of who he is. How do you feel? And if women listen to their feelings, they're going to exit relationships a lot quicker, instead of spending 25 years trying to fix that anxiety, because he doesn't know how to handle conflict. And she knew that within 6 months of the relationship. So I just give her the power and the courage to break up with that guy. When someone says, Evan, thanks to love you, I got a boyfriend. Great, that's step one. How do you feel? Well, it's been 3 months and he's not acting like he did at the beginning. He's not making the same effort. I'm
Good
kind
God.
of afraid to talk to him. He's got a little bit of a temper. I'll say, get out. But Evan, it's 6 months. I love him. Get out. I have to do that because they don't trust their judgment. But now we don't waste 2 years on the guy. We spent 6 months. We invested 6 months to only determine, not my husband, but maybe a step closer to my husband. And then when you find a relationship where there's no anxiety, now this is a thing to hold on to. But for women who are used to anxiety, that feels very foreign. It felt foreign to me to have an easy relationship. The entire time I was dating my wife, I was like, this can't be it. I didn't spend my whole life holding out for this. This doesn't look the part at all. I made an educated guess when I dated my wife, when I chose to propose to my wife, because it was so different than the roller coaster that I was used to. And the roller coaster was based on choosing the smartest, hottest woman. That's not a recipe for a successful relationship, smart and hot. That's a bonus.
That's a really good distinction. And I'm wondering, could we actually have a false positive where we feel anxious? I believe the kind of anxiety you're talking about is kind of akin to a walking on eggshells anxiety, and that is a negative sign, unequivocally. If you are walking on eggshells, that's probably a sign that something needs to be dealt with. And yet, I wonder if a person could feel anxious merely because they're not used to this type of relationship, and it's actually a good one. And the anxiety itself is the byproduct of the newness. Or in your experience of working with so many people, is that not the case?
It's a really good observation that I hadn't considered before, and I think it's accurate. I was anxious when I was dating my wife, but not because of my wife. I was anxious because I was the dog who caught the car. I was so identified with being the single guy. I made a career out of being the single guy. That when I found someone who was perfect for me, I didn't know I was making the right decision. And that's the hard part. We want to know. We want to know that this person is the right choice. It's my soulmate. And here's the thing. Every time I just knew someone was right for me, I was wrong. All 3 women that I thought were the one dumped me. So I don't trust the you just know feeling. Now, if someone has a story of, oh my God, you just know, and they've been together for 40 years, so they'll say, oh, well, you should just know. No, you forgot all the people that you just know who dumped you.
Right.
So I don't trust you just know. But that's what we want, because it means we don't have to think anymore. So my anxiety when I was dating my wife was only I don't know. I don't know what it feels like. I don't want to make a bad decision. But I had such a body of evidence of all my other bad decisions that I figured if this relationship is so easy, it's going to keep on being easy. And I could have a really, really nice life if I stop thinking I can do better. I could date someone just like my wife, but 5 years younger. I could date someone just like my wife who's better read. Oh God, stop. I had enough of a body of evidence to know what was out there. So that's where the logic came in. And that's not sexy at all. It's not romantic at all. It was a calculus, but it's the same calculus you make when you buy a house or you take a job. There's the pros and the cons, and you make an informed decision. It turns out I made a really great decision, but it wasn't driven by, oh my God, you just know thoughtlessness. It was, I've dated 300 women, and this is the healthiest relationship I ever had. Why would I think I can do better?
Yeah. So this,
and the anxiety was simply I did not know. It was the last time I had a therapist. I had a therapist at the time, but not because I was unhappy, but because I knew the pressure was on me to make a really good decision. Because I was then 35. My wife was then 38. I didn't want to waste her time if she wanted to have kids. I had to figure it out. And I proposed to my wife in 16 months. I wouldn't recommend anybody do that. Have everybody wait 2 to 2.5 years. If I waited 2.5 years, again, my wife, we would have been too old to have kids. But if I had waited 2.5 years, I would have realized, oh my God, I'm lost without her. After 16 months, she wasn't so deeply embedded in my life. So unless you are in your late 30s and want to have kids, I would encourage everybody to date for at least 2 years. So the newness wears off and you're really left with something that really closely resembles a marriage.
The thing I also like about the 2 years is that you see them through the seasons, and you also hopefully, and I don't mean this in I hope that the person experiences strife, but we want to see how well we come together as a couple during adversity. It's very easy to go to Hawaii together and have a great time, or Disneyland and have a great time. But how does the relationship go, and how well do we communicate? How well do we team up when things go sideways?
There's a great article that I've talked about on my podcast. You can Google it. 13 questions you should ask before you get married. It was a New York Times article. And I don't think it's questions you ask like an interview. You talked about the interview style of dating. I don't think it's a very effective way to date. But over the course of dating someone, before you get engaged or before you get married, you should have dealt with libido, money, family, cleanliness, introversion, extroversion, belief systems, the role of religion. So all of these things should be dealt with so you could figure out if there are points of friction or not. The crazy thing about dating my wife and marrying my wife is we come from completely different backgrounds, but we conflict over almost nothing. We're completely bought into how we're raising our kids, our parenting styles. We're completely bought into the way we lead our social life and how we run the house, and all the things that divide other people actually don't divide us, even though on paper we don't look compatible. So that's why I've really come around to this idea of compatibility is there's no one size fits all relationship. It's how does the system work? Is the wheel round? Is it flowing? If you have a lot of chemistry and you have a lot in common, but there's a lot of friction points, religion could be an issue for my wife and I, but it's not.
That's amazing.
If it's a big deal, then it's going to come up over and over and over in your marriage, and it's going to get harder and harder and harder. Dating someone for a few years is going to reveal the friction points that you will have to either learn to live with or not live with. And if you realize there aren't many friction points, that might be a relationship worth investing in and latching onto for the rest of your life. And we have the social science these days to validate all of these truth claims that the best partners are the ones who have the big 5 traits. And it's a better partner is someone who's easygoing. You might think it's someone who's got a great body, but someone who's fundamentally a yes person, who's agreeable, is a better partner because it's just less to fight about. And women don't always choose men agreeable, and men tend to be less agreeable than women. So women are attracted to toxic narcissist men whose opinion matters and no one else's opinion matters because it's almost like its own magnet. But those men often tend to make for terrible partners. The better partner is the guy who says, yes, dear. And she's like, I don't want a yes, dear partner. So we have contradictory impulses. What we're attracted to and what's good for us are not exactly the same thing. And that's why I look at dating like a big Venn diagram. The more those circles overlap, the happier a relationship. A lot of people try to have relationships where the circles don't even overlap.
That's absolutely amazing. And I couldn't agree more. The word I've often used, it came to me through an academic, is efficiency. How efficient of a system are we? Do we agree on having children or not having children? Do we agree on how we raise them? Do we agree on buying or renting a house or where we live in the city or in the country or the suburbs? All of these things matter. And the friction that you describe is really consistent with my perception as a psychologist and as a husband, that this is what portends best, is the fewer friction points. And these can only be sussed out throughout time. What we say versus what we do can be very different. And how we believe ourselves to be versus how we actually comport ourselves in the context of relationship can also be very different. My man, I could talk to you all day, but I'm going to ask you, is there anything I should have asked but haven't yet asked before I ask my final big question?
No, I didn't come prepared with any remarks. What I would say is that I've got a gift for all of your listeners, for women who are curious. I mean, I do coach guys too. They usually don't see through my marketing, but this advice is 95% of the same. How to date and how to choose a better life partner is a unisex thing. I just happen to be a coach for women because women ask for more help than men. So I have a gift for the women listening. You go to evanmarckatz.com/superpsyched. And I've got a quiz. Are you wasting time on the wrong men? Take this 10-question quiz and you might discover that you have spent your whole life wasting time on the wrong men. And I'll send you free dating and relationship advice as long as you want free dating and relationship advice. So that's my gift for your listeners.
I love it. So my final question for you, Evan, is this. If you had the power to confer upon all humanity one insight or skill that would improve the lives of that individual, and perhaps since we're all connected, society at large, what would that insight or skill be? And how do you imagine it would impact the individual as well as the people around them?
It's probably just because of the conversation we just had that led us to this point. But it would be the ability to see other people's perspectives. I think that's sort of the savior for humanity, is to understand and validate people's perspectives. As a psychologist, I'm sure that's what you do. As a dating coach, I'm not a woman and my clients are all women. I have to understand and validate where they're coming from, their reality, introduce another reality, and combined, that Venn diagram creates a more whole picture of the world. And I think most of our interpersonal and planetary conflict basically comes with an inability to validate other people's perspectives. And if we could do that, we might not agree on everything, but we could at least get along without the hate.
Man, beautifully said. Evan, it has been a blast being with you. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with my listeners.
Oh my God, thank you for having me. You're my new best friend.
Right on, dude.
This is Dr. Adam Dorsey thanking you for listening to Super Psyched. If you know anyone who might like it or who might benefit from listening, share it. And if you like the episode, please hit subscribe.